Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. Our guest of today is Gerry, and he's head of marketing at Copia Automation. And yeah, Gerry, why don't you tell a little bit more about yourself and all the amazing stuff your company is doing?
Sure. Thank you, Joey. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Gerry Abbey, like you said, head of marketing at Copia Automation. We are an industrial DevOps platform and specializing in industrial code management. Happy to expand on that as much as you like.
Very nice. And what are you guys doing exactly? For which customers?
Sure. We target enterprise customers, so the largest organizations in the world, and those organizations that have a lot of automation in their manufacturing and distribution operations. And what we do is bring DevOps into that cyber physical space. So DevOps, if you're unfamiliar or any of the listeners are unfamiliar with it, was founded around 2009. So it's been out for about 16 years. And the theory behind it is connecting the development teams and the operation teams so that you could develop software faster. What had previously been the standard before that was waterfall methodology, where very slowly each team would develop what they're working on and then slowly hand off each piece. And by the time you had a piece of software ready to ship, it would get to the end of the line and then maybe it wouldn't work. Or maybe there was some other type of quirk with it or bug, and it had to go back and cycle through that development phase. So DevOps was an approach to bring those teams together and to ship code faster, that if something is broken, they can figure it out quickly. The impact of this change in approach wasn't a 25% increase in productivity or 50% increase. I'm talking about 100 times plus increase in productivity. To this day, Google runs the DORA report, which is, I always forget the full acronym, but a study of DevOps and how it's interacting and being used today. And even today, they show that teams that are using DevOps principles are around 120 times more productive in many key categories. Maybe you're thinking this already exists. Why do you need industrial DevOps? Because there's so many great tools out there today for DevOps. But in manufacturing and distribution, you have the cyber, that IT end of things, the software and everything. But you also have the physical of machines running, being run by that code. And before just deploying it, typically people talk about CI, CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. You can't just deploy it into the physical space because it might change what the machine's doing and adversely impact safety if people are working around that machine. If you haven't tested that code and you deploy it to the machine, there's potential that it could break the machine. It could run it at the wrong parameters. There's all sorts of physical consequences when you deploy code in this space. And the industrial DevOps approach takes into account both the cyber and physical spaces so that you're doing it in a best-in-class way. You're testing code offline before deploying it. And then manually, at least today, you're still manually deploying it. But we are moving towards testing the idea of deploying code remotely and have done that with a couple customers. But again, thinking about safety, we really dig in and make sure that we are rigorously testing everything before shipping it into our own product to make it a best-in-class approach for everyone.
Yeah, very nice. And pretty interesting what you're saying. It makes, once you're applying it, it makes you like 100 times, maybe even 120 times more productive, right? Because you get way more feedback and you don't have to wait until it's finished and then there are some quirks in it and for you to optimize. So the feedback throughout the process is way quicker. And my question to you is, you might already mention it, but maybe you can like elaborate a little bit on that. Like, what is the biggest risks of people not using it, not really applying this?
That's a great question. The biggest risks are you're not getting that productivity is one. But two, I think so much about workforce because in manufacturing and distribution today, the conversation revolves around workforce and in many different phases of it. 10,000 baby boomers a day, I think, are reaching retirement age at this point. And a lot of the people who manage industrial code are older controls engineers, and they are aging out. And there's no set way to try and retain that knowledge that's just being lost. And then trying to recruit new people into the space, new controls engineers, is challenging. Most of the people that you would be recruiting, all of them, are digital natives. They grew up with iPhones and technology and tablets. And when they come into a plant that is manually walking around from machine to machine with a USB stick, plugging it in, or a laptop and plugging it in, modifying the code right there, unplugging it, walking around, just listening to me is monotonous, let alone actually doing those tasks machine by machine. It's going to be really hard to recruit somebody in. And there's so much opportunity right now to capture people who have been laid off in the IT space because of changes with AI, restructuring with organizations. And it opens this opportunity to introduce those IT experts that are out there into the OT space. They have a wealth of knowledge and experience, just not in this particular set. And they could be trained up quickly if you have the right tools and can attract them in to say, oh, this is a new challenge, and I love challenges. It totally changes the game when you have the right technology in place to appeal to those people that you want to recruit in. And then third point here, whether it is that demographic that you're trying to bring in or an intern or just anybody you're trying to onboard, when you have a system in place that has industrial DevOps, people are able to work on the code in one place. It pulls from the proprietary systems and allows everybody to collaborate at different plants. And you can comment in the code, you can work on the code. One of our customers talks all the time about how he used to not be able to do anything with new people and interns because if they make a mistake in the code and it gets deployed, it's a huge problem. With Copia, they can make mistakes in the code because then it goes to him for testing, for review. And he can go in and he can say, oh, why did you do this here? This needs to be changed to that, commenting right in line with the code. It adds that really tight feedback loop for people to learn fast and get up to speed. And then it also takes the onus off of those older controls engineers where they might have to do things that they don't want to with getting somebody onboarded. And it helps those newer people up level faster and come with more complex questions that can engage that older group and build a bond between your different experienced workforce that's there today.
Nice. I love what you're saying. So we're talking productivity, right? At the same time, once new people are on board, like the feedback loop is way quicker and more direct, which makes it also, what you're saying as well, more fun to learn. I think one of the most important things in business is like when you're learning with anything in life, right? Like it should be fun. And one of the ways which makes learning fun, if the learning experience is if the learning curve is pretty high, right? Because that means like you're learning every day. And if you have like something which gives you this feedback, is really empowering for you to move forward as well, which also doubles the productivity of your own, like of the people who are working for your company as well.
Yeah, everyone benefits. It's such a powerful tool.
Yeah. And do you also use like AI in your tool?
We do. And the way we're using it today also benefits the workforce in being able to create new code, not new code that you're going to just deploy, but new code to help get you started that's based off of the existing code today. You can also summarize code. So if you're new and coming in, what is this? You can ask our Copilot, what is this? And then it explains it. You can document your code libraries. We found this to be a huge pain point for customers in our alpha and beta testing. The fact that they were able to go in and have the Copilot make documentation for all their code and then be able to update it in minutes is an extraordinary time savings for something that is oftentimes painstaking or not even done because of the pain and the amount of time that it triggers. And then separately, one of the parts I didn't dive into yet, I was talking about going machine to machine to plug in those USB sticks or your laptop. You're not just modifying the code there, you're also backing the code up. That's how a lot of organizations are doing it today, if they even have backups. And I've heard many different horror stories of losing that USB stick or that laptop the hard drive crashes and you lose thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lines of code, and you have to start over. With Copia, we have a tool that automatically backs everything up so that, again, it's centralized. And then if you have a weather event, the factory gets flooded, and you need the code as you restart the machines, you have it in a secure place. If you get hit with a ransomware attack, like JLR just got hit with, and you can't get your operations up and running, you don't know what code is safe to use. If you're automatically backing it up, you have it right there in the cloud and can revert to the last known working safe version of the code and get up and running faster. For that end of it, we also have AI diff descriptions. We're actually putting out a press release, fully releasing it in 2 weeks. Exciting time to be talking about it. But it gives natural language descriptions of what's changed in the code. So the tool compares the last backup versus the new backup, and then AI steps in to review those different segments of code, and then it tells you in a few sentences exactly what's changed. So the benefit of that, not just to see the changes, but also to flag something that is unexpected so that you can go in there and investigate. And if it is something, an outside actor, a ransomware incident, or just somebody made a mistake, you can identify that before it becomes a major problem.
Very nice. And what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced towards growing Copia? And as well, how did you overcome those challenges?
That's a great question. I think more than anything, it's challenging in this space to make people aware that there's a problem. In OT, oftentimes the operational technology mentality is set it and forget it. We have things working. If we bring in something new, it could trigger downtime. This report behind me, we've done a lot of research around this, and the downtime numbers are massive, especially for large organizations. This year's report calculated at 3.6 million per hour. They have a lot on the line, and there's a lot of resistance to introducing something new because they know whether it's that 3.6 million, it's going to be different for everybody,
Yeah.
but it's painful. And nobody wants that to happen. Their job is on the line for every second, every minute of downtime happening. So the hardest hurdle to overcome is to get people bought into the idea that there's a better way. This is a great tool for your teams. The teams benefit immensely. And with more and more regulations coming into the space, NIS2, the SEC recently introduced a new rule in late 2023 as well for mandatory reporting of cyber attacks and other regulations. There's more and more coming. You need to have these backups, and that's putting the extra pressure to make people realize this is something I need. It's the next step in modernization. That's where we have the most conversation. It's convincing the stakeholders that it's time for change.
I love what you're saying. Like, usually, I think with anything in life, and the same thing applies with business as well, people really change, right? Implement new things once the situation is really urgent, once they need to, right? But sometimes they don't even know they need to change. And this group, they have to be aware, like, where they actually are right now. So I like what you're saying about the awareness. In this market, there's like 3% of the people, like, I think in a lot of like business to business SaaS companies in this space, they're always like ready to buy. But then the bigger space, like they have an issue, but they don't really know they have an issue, right? But once they know like what's going on and they know about your service, you start to become very interesting to this bigger group. And what are some of the ways you guys are using to acquire those new customers?
For me, as the head of marketing here, it's just building awareness and using reports like this, going
Yeah.
on podcasts like today with you, Joey. I speak a ton at conferences, different presentations, educational sessions, and keynotes to raise the awareness because some people aren't aware of the spreading regulations that they need to be conforming to. The NIS2 directive, while it was published in, I think, late 2024, it took a little while for it to really have teeth and the penalties that were being introduced to really impact organizations. But there's a high cost to not complying. And right now, compliance looks like having all of that industrial code backed up in the event of anything. We have more and more weather events. Cyber attacks are on the rise within the space. You have less experienced individuals operating at levels that they may not be supposed to just because of the workforce shortage today. So there's so many possibilities of things going wrong. And it's a simple step if you prioritize to have that code backed up. And then you also have the benefits of having a better way to manage it. It makes all the difference in the world. And I am doing everything I can just to talk about that as much as possible and also to put it in simple terms. I had a conversation with one CISO a few weeks back, that Chief Information Security Officer of a huge enterprise. And when we were talking through it, I could see that he didn't have a lot of exposure to the operational technology side of things. And part of that is a lot of organizations operate under what's called the Purdue model, and they have this layer within their OT network that segments it away from the public network. And they think it is totally air gapped and protected. But the reality is that the devices within the OT space have been doubling every 5 years for the last 20. That is exponential. And 20 years ago, you could manage things the way that they were managed 10 years ago. But today, there's just so many devices that you need systems in place to manage them. And 10 years ago, companies like Clarity, Dragos, Nozomi, and others stepped in and brought network monitoring and asset identification so you could help track all of those devices and make sure they're secure. That has become table stakes in the industry at this point, where everyone's like, yeah, I need network monitoring, I need asset identification. That's how we need to operate so that we know what's going on, that we're secure. But now that that has matured as part of the industry, the next essential phase is backing up all of your industrial code, because that is the critical asset that's being overlooked and the backbone of all automation operations.
Very nice. And if you look back, right, with all the lessons you've learned along your journey of growing, like facing challenges, overcoming these challenges, let's say where you are right now, this moment of time when we're talking together in the podcast, like what's one thing you would do differently if you look back in the past amongst like all the lessons you've learned?
Or all the lessons I've learned, I think, even though I've tried to keep it pretty laser focused on a few things to do really well, like these reports and giving presentations and building the brand awareness, it is always difficult in a Series A startup to keep the focus. And that's one thing that I think I can always do more of. Like before we jumped onto the podcast, I was talking about working on my prioritization list. And that's something that ebbs and flows. I was at conferences earlier this month. Just when your schedule's disrupted, it's easy to lose that laser focus on top priorities. So that's one area. And honestly, throughout my career, something that I've always thought about and see sometimes when you lose the focus on that number one priority, how it can impact everything. So that's probably the biggest learning, just to maintain a clear focus. There's a great book out there called The One Thing, really focuses on this idea of what is the one thing that above all, everything else you need to focus on. Do that and everything else will follow.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and it's kind of easier said than done, right? Because we're saying like this is gonna be the focus of today, but then boom, like 100 things keeps happening, and then there's a challenge amongst all the storm which is out there. Can you still be focused on that one thing which you are describing? This makes someone, like anyone in life, having a great productivity as well, because you're super focused on what really matters. Do you know Harry Potter?
Yes.
Yeah, let's say Harry Potter, and you had like a magic wand, right? And with this magic wand, you could solve any problem or any issue you're having in the business right now with the snap of a fingers. What problem would you choose with this magic wand?
Right now, cleanliness of my data and visibility into the impact of everything I'm doing. It can never have enough clarity on the different activities of marketing. And I think one of the biggest struggles in the go-to-market function is being able to get all the way down in the nitty-gritty. How did somebody arrive at my website? What was their life cycle before that? How did they first hear about Copia that brought them to the website? the activities that they took after joining, like going through the website and then arriving at that light bulb moment of this is what we need and we're going to buy it. But
Yeah.
those stages before first arriving, like, did they read something? Did they hear something at an event? Did they see us somewhere? It's getting visibility into that. If I could wave a magic wand, I think that would be one of the areas I would do it.
Very nice. So creating visibility into that so you're able to have more knowledge how to create more awareness, right? Which we were talking about. And let's say, what are some of the goals you guys are having with Copia and let's say in the next 6 to 12 months from now?
To continue growing. Again, as a Series A venture-backed startup, we want to grow aggressively and figuring out those ways. And that's something that I'm digging into now, figuring out like what is the best channel to reach our customers and how can we amplify our voice, amplify exposure, and doubling down in those. And right now, we're continuing to build out our team and focus on those top 1 to 3 things that are going to have the biggest impact. And we're really doing it as full team. I talk very much about the go-to-market team, and that includes our product team. It includes our customer experience team, our sales team, our CEO and founder, both our founders, just all working together, sharing information, and finding laser focus in how we continue to grow as much as possible. And that also includes partners. I think partnership is a huge lever for us to pull on to continue growing and build that exposure.
Very nice. Kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about the book, right? The one thing. Kind of focusing on the things which are going to make the most impact. And I think a friend of mine read the book, The One Thing, and he said that it's about like the kind of doing it 10%, which gives 90% of the kind of results, right? This is what they're saying in the book. Yeah. For the people who are watching this podcast, right? There are like a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs are watching it. If you can give one piece of advice towards these people who are watching the podcast, they can start implementing right away. What kind of advice would you give to these people who are watching the podcast?
Talk to everyone that is within your space or peripherally, and listen with intent to understand. Really hear what those people are saying, and it's going to help you find product fit way faster. But you really need good advisors, and you really need to listen to all the different people that you talk to out there, especially the people that are going to use the product, because they will tell you over and over exactly what they need. And if you listen intently, they might not say it perfectly, but you're going to hear and catch the theme of where you need to go. They will lead you to the promised land.
Very nice. I like that. Like learning and being a curious person as well, right? Because if you have this genuine curiosity, it kind of comes automatic once you're connecting with this person. You're going to be opening, you're going to be listening because you want to know. You want to know how to improve your business, right? So for the people who are watching it, what are some of the ways they can connect with you, Gerry, or like the Copia as well?
To connect with me, I'm active on LinkedIn, always will be responsive, so please reach out. For Copia, you can find us at copia.io. That's our website, and you can reach out to us there. You can also message me at Gerry, Gerry, at copia.io. That's my email, and I'm very responsive there as well.
Very nice. Gerry, thanks so much for you being here. I'm going to make sure for everyone who's watching the podcast to make sure to put all the links of Gerry and Copia down in the description below so you can really easily find it. Thanks for tuning in and see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much, Joey, and thanks to our audience. Really appreciate everybody.